Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Social Work Services Committee. It's been live streamed as usual and will be made available on the Council website for public viewing. Could I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their video when they're not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write "Speak" in the Teams chat function, and you'll be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we deal with the business as efficiently as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or you could write "Leave" in the Teams chat function and then join. This will allow us to monitor member presence. If we can put general comments on the chat, I would be happier if it was recorded as part of the main conversation. I think that would be the best way to go forward. And just the last thing before we move on to business proper, the Vice Chair, myself and the Chief Social Work Officer, we've agreed that at the start of the next few, I would suggest, committees, that we pick a service area to come and give us a 10-minute presentation on how they do it, and so that you can ask some questions like a Q&A. I'm looking at the membership, and I think there's almost half the membership are new to social work, so I think it'd be beneficial to everybody, and I hope you agree, and take that as a positive step. Okay. Okay. So from that, then we'll move on. Claire, can you confirm the SEDAR and approve remote participation? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Got one apology today from Councillor Mayo. There's, for the benefit of those on Teams, we have 10 members present in the Council Hall, as well as yourself, Chair. We've got the Vice Chair, Councillor Dorward, Johnston, Little, McFarlane, Scobie, Slater, Stevenson and Wilson. There's 7 members present on Teams, being Councillors Bell, Davis, Drysdale, Hill, Jameson, McGregor and Young. The remaining 3 currently not present.
Thanks, Claire. And I formally approve remote participation of those who are online. Okay, thanks. Moving on to declaration of interest. Has anybody got a declaration of interest? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody put their hand up, or there's nothing online, Claire, is that, I think? No. So we'll move on to item number 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. I'd be happy to agree the minute. That's genuine, true? Agreed, thank you. So then we'll move on to agenda item number 4. The Social Services Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for the period ending the 31st of March 2022. So you'll notice that's a historical position. Janet Sutton will speak to this report. And again, just to note that the 628k to be placed in reserves because of further increased income levels from external sources at the end of the last financial year, which fully offset the projected overspend in fostering throughout the year. Note the agreement FPT as to the use of these reserves. So it's a bit of historical context as well. Janet, are you there? Yep. Good morning. Is there anything you'd like to add, Janet, or are you happy just going straight to questions?
I've nothing further to add to the report, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we go straight to questions. Linda?
Thanks, Chair. It's not specifically about the budget, but point 3.6, it states that expenditure levels are not as high as anticipated due to recruitment of social workers being slower than anticipated due to a national shortage of qualified staff. I'm not expecting a detailed response at the moment, but it would be useful to know how that's going. Thank you.
I'll get the Chief Social Work Officer rather than Janet to answer that. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I think recruitment's an extremely difficult position that we find ourselves in just now. We are part of a national shortage of social workers, qualified social workers across Scotland. We do have an ongoing issue of recruitment and retention due to the geographical location of Dumfries and Galloway, and also, as members are aware, I've raised this a number of times, we are certainly towards the bottom, if not very close to the bottom of the scale for the salary band for our social workers. So that provides us with an additional challenge. I can give assurance that we're trying every which way to build some incentives in to try and encourage new social workers to come and work in the region. We've got a really robust training programme, professional support around the team that we're trying to grow and offer other ways in which we can try and support folks to come and work with us. But we're not getting a significant response to adverts that are going out just now, and we have lost quite a lot of our experienced social workers, just people re-evaluating their life after the pandemic. I would also say to members that we are, as part of our seminar with members on the 4th of October, we will do an overview on the Setting the Bar report that I have circulated to all members of Dumfries and Galloway, around the fact that social workers generally walk away from the profession after 6 years, and that's due to some of the pressures that they're currently facing in the role in particular. So I don't anticipate that the current situation that we're facing will improve any time soon, but we are doing absolutely everything that we can locally and within the service to offer different incentives for folks to come and work with us. And part of that includes our looking at the development of our Grow Your Own scheme, which has proven to be hugely successful moving forward. And I'm certainly happy to take any further questions or give any further clarity. Thank you.
Okay, Linda, do you come back?
Thanks, Chair. Just it would be useful to keep a watching brief on that, I suggest. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anyone else? Can't see. Personally, I prefer to call it retain and recruit, because I think one of the tasks we've got is to keep what we've got.
Absolutely.
So I don't not particularly exercise one way or another, but you know, it's a big task. So how are we going to do it, Lillian? Will we have sort of maybe every second meeting or something like that, give us an update of where we are?
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy if members feel that every second meeting is enough, or I'm happy to bring a report every meeting, whichever members feel in terms of the criticality of it. It may be more prudent to do it at every meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I'm in people's hands. Willie?
Yeah, Chair, if it's I'm sure it is possible, but if we could get that by area, I know in the West it's particularly acute in terms of social work recruitment, and you know, to what Lillian just referred to as the grow our own, whether we're taking maximum opportunities for that, and it has proved successful in the past. So maybe area by area, so that we can know just exactly what pressure those in the services are under.
Okay, I'm just wondering as well, Lillian, if we can tie that in with the local report and the Health Social Care Partnership. So if it's the same calendar, so we're not doing the same job twice, if that makes sense. And that definitely comes to each area committee, which is probably the best way to get some decent conversation about it.
To the area committees?
Well, I'm actually wondering if yeah, and then we can just get an update here every, whatever. I mean, I'm in your hands here, because I think everybody's agreed we need to be kept up to speed. So how we do it, I'm happy to let you have a think about the best way forward, and we can share that with members. But I'm just seeing an opportunity here to use the annual, the quarterly reporting to area committees of the Health Social Care Partnership. Paula?
personally, I would like it to come back here. This is the Social Work Committee, and all social workers, despite where they live, actually come under this remit.
Yeah, they also get reported on a quarterly basis to the area committees as well. That's why I'm saying we do both, right, rather than just one.
Sorry, Andy, I thought you meant just going to the area committees, but no, I would appreciate it if it came here, just so that we can show that we are intent on supporting those that we already have. Yeah,
I think that's what I'm trying to say, Paula, is that, you know, we need an overview here, right, but we need to duck down and dive into the detail on a district-by-district basis is probably the best. That would probably help your local teams as well.
Thanks, Chair. I can certainly look to have this added to the Health and Social Care calendar for reporting to the area committees, as well as bringing it back to Social Work Committee. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons for that as well is that it's not just the 21 people in this committee, because the Health Social Care is all 43 members are involved in it. So we need to make sure all members are cited on what the situation is. So that's why I'm wanting to work the dual system. Paula?
That's fine, Andy. Sorry, I wasn't picking you up properly. I thought you just meant coming here. Yeah.
Andy Mack?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. One of the things you said, Lillian, is that we are at the bottom end of the pay scale. Is there a reason for that, and is there anything can be done about it?
Thank you for that question. We have raised this last Social Work Administration Committee, raised it and supported some work to be undertaken with HR. That work is ongoing, and we are having a look to see how we could further enhance the salary grade that's available to social workers. It's a historical issue. I was reflecting just a few weeks ago. I'm kind of here 8 years now, and it's been an issue that we've been trying to resolve during that period of time. So there is a link to the single status agreement and to the allocation of resource to social work services. But it is something that I think moving forward we're going to have to try to continue to work, and I certainly am continuing to work with colleagues in human resources to try and resolve this issue. Thank you.
Linda, you want back in, and I've got somebody else want to come in. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I think for me, monthly reporting at the moment, it sounds like it's quite an acute issue, and also in terms of what my colleague just said about remuneration for social workers, that should be included in the report as well, because that seems to be quite a sticking point. Thank you.
Yeah, I think under the breath it was happy to do that. It was Lillian's response, and I think you're right, because we need to look at this in the whole, not just cherry pick little bits to look at. We need to look at the whole thing. Chrissy, I see you've got your hand up. Can I ask people if they can put it into the meeting chat, because that'll give us an order for people who come in. So Chrissy, it's up to you.
Hi, with you saying that there's the programmes for social workers, is there any sort of way, or is there already in force a programme for social work assistants to try and get, grow your own social work assistants, and then they have the opportunity to go on and become social workers? So then you're looking at people that are coming out of college with HNCs, HNDs, and we're getting them there. Do you know what I mean? Is that a possibility? Is that something that's already been done?
Lillian, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. We actually don't generally have any issue with recruitment or retention of our social work assistants. We always have many people who apply for those posts. The real issue is the qualified social worker, who obviously, from our point of view, are required to undertake the statutory duties and the assessment of risk. I mean, I could do a bit of reflection and share with members the amount of social work assistants who have gone on through the Grow Your Own programme and have worked their way through university to become social workers and social work managers. So we've got a highly successful programme, but at that very initial point of recruitment and retention, social work assistants are not the issue. It is the qualified social worker. We do have a wider issue with social care workers. So almost social work assistants would be placed in the middle of that tariff. So we have a real problem with qualified professional social workers at the top of the scale, and we have a real problem with social care workers that would be classed to be at the bottom of the tariff in terms of, not in any way at the bottom in terms of their importance, but at the bottom of the scale in terms of tariff. And we have a real problem with social care workers in the region. So the social work assistants are effectively sandwiched in the middle. I think they have a really strong career pathway of development, and part of the work that we're trying to do to encourage social care workers into the region is to offer them the opportunity for that pathway to be able to have a very clear career opportunity, and we're doing that through the Health and Social Care Partnership. So welcome the question and the reflection, but I can give you assurance we've got a really clear opportunity for our social work assistants. Thank you.
You okay, Chrissy?
Lovely, yeah, no, that's absolutely great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody at all get their hand up or whatever, so I'm going to move to the recommendations. That's 2.1 as at the end of March 2022, social work services contained expenditure within the agreed budget and returned resources of 628k to service reserves set out in Appendix 1. And 2.2, the utilisation of agreed policy development allocations applied to the 21-22 social services budget, and that's set out in Appendix 2. We happy note? Okay, thank you. In that case, then we'll move on to item number 5. Janet, thank you very much. The Delivering the Promise, Stephen Morgan will speak to this report. It's an updated report requested by members to provide an overview of the progress made for the Council in the commitment to keep the promise. In inverted commas, the report reflects the ongoing work being undertaken by social work services. I've been asked to draw attention to 3.10 of the report, which reflects the proposed funding for the life of the Parliament, with the Scottish Government making a commitment moving forward. So there's a funding commitment from the Scottish Government for this to continue. Stephen, is there anything you want to add, or are you quite happy just going straight to questions?
If I may add a few comments, please, Chair.
Yeah, of course you can.
Okay, thanks, colleagues, and it's great to be here again. I think it's really important to remind all of us the reason why the promise is here. And that's because the independent care review of Scotland's childcare system was absolutely damning. It showed that the system was uncaring, unloving, and the outcomes for Scotland's most vulnerable children were absolutely terrible, if we put it bluntly. So what the promise has done is it's set a 10-year plan for all of Scotland's children, and for us, for Dumfries and Galloway's children, and how we improve that system. Locally, we were heavily involved in the development of the review, and Lillian was one of the core members initially. And because of that, we were in a good position to see what was coming, and we developed our own family support service, which you've been briefed on at the previous committee, which has really helped us look at the earlier intervention. We also looked at the love in the system, which some people scorned at that word love because of what it means, but all human beings need to be loved in order to grow and develop. In order to do that, you've got to build relationships. So we looked at our social work practice, and we trained all of our staff in social work and hundreds across the multi-agency partnership, particularly in schools, around relationship-based practice to build on people's strengths. So that's given us a really good starting point to be what I would class as ahead of the game in terms of our delivery of the promise. We've seen the numbers of children who were at risk of abuse in Dumfries and Galloway, those who were formerly placed on the child protection register, reduced significantly. That's because we're building on their strengths, we're building better relationships, and that's something we should be proud of. So the numbers of children, although any child at risk of abuse is terrible, have reduced, and we're working better. Similarly, our numbers of children on compulsory supervision orders has reduced, and that's because we've got better relationships. And even though grounds of referral still exist for those children, compulsion isn't required because of the relationships that we're building. But this has required a lot of investment in our staff, etc. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the reason and some of the successes that we've had, and quite happy to take any questions. And I am very aware there's an awful lot in these papers, and you know, beyond today, happy to come and speak to any of you individually or collectively about what we're doing, and I'll try not to get carried away with my enthusiasm too much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Willie?
I'll take Stephen up on his offer there and may deal with a couple of cases. I'm just looking at page 20 in particular, and just to what Stephen was saying there, 3.5 in terms of the rapid changes that have taken place across Dumfries and Galloway, and how some of these changes required may not be fully acknowledged. And then I go on to look at 3.6, and just to what you were saying there, Stephen, in terms of the reduction to CPRs, child protection register, number of kids that are appearing there, and also in the next bullet point to the CPOs, the child protection order. And it's really contrasting that with a further bullet point there, and our referrals have continued to grow. And it may relate back to the previous report in terms of our capacity to deal with these issues, not just at social work level, but at other levels in carers, respite and so forth. And it's contrasting that with kids who are out there in terms of respite and complying with the compulsory supervision orders. When there's holidays, when there's not the number of staff, are we meeting our requirements in those terms, recognising and pleasing to note that these are reducing, but we've still got kids out there who need that attention, that early intervention that you refer to? Are we meeting it? And I'll pick up on a couple of cases. I'm not talking in big numbers. I'll pick up on a couple of individuals where we may not be meeting our requirements in terms of respite and orders that are placed by panels, etc. Hence why I asked about area by area.
Yep, thanks for that, Councillor Scobie. What I can assure members is that, yes, we are meeting our statutory duties for the children on the Child Protection Register, for children on compulsory supervision orders. What I would add to that is you're absolutely right that the strain on staff is phenomenal. Lillian's already made reference to that today. Without the additional numbers of family support workers, which is similar to social work assistants in terms of the language that's previously been used, we would not have been able to meet those statutory duties. Without the increase in funding that this council gave us on a short-term basis for that team, we would not have been able to meet our statutory duties to the same degree that we have done. What we do struggle with is the amount of resource that's available to meet the broader set of needs that everybody has. So we don't meet all of the needs of everyone, and we're aware of that. So Lillian's made reference to, the lack of social care workers for older people. Similarly, the lack of respite care available, foster carers in the region were absolutely stretched, and we've had to look at agency placements for foster care, and that was referenced in the previous report. So I can assure everybody in this room and across the whole of the council that we are meeting our statutory duties, but not everybody's whole set of needs is being met all of the time, and we have to be honest about that.
Chair, I would just come back and
if you can, somebody else to come in.
I'm taking up the offer to meet with Stephen on the cases that I have in hand, where we get children that are being displaced or put in what you refer to agency, respite and so forth, and I'll pick that up with you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor George Jameson.
Yeah, hello. Firstly, well done, because I think it's a hugely important piece of work, and it looks like there's been progress made, which is great, and I don't underestimate the challenges that you've got. One question I would like to put to you, and there's no way a loaded question, is that collaboration's a key word here. With my education hat on, how well are we collaborating between the schools and the social services, and how well are teachers, etc., trained to identify issues and be able to resolve them? Early intervention is obviously key, but continued support is really important. And we're currently having an assistant support needs discussion. So how well can we maximise the potential of the school to help families and children that need extra help?
Thank you for the question. We collaborate really well, but there's room for improvement, and we're well aware of that. Part of our current plans is to look at the type of support that is in school. And we're not necessarily speaking about putting social workers or family support workers into schools, but having a really strong communication link whereby teachers are really, really good at spotting a child or a young person who's in need, but they often struggle about accessing the support. So we're looking at bridging that gap so we have a much more fluid system of communication, of access to support, with people who can do that quick assessment on behalf of the teacher, because teachers, as brilliant as they are at understanding a child requires additional support out with the education system, they're not trained to do the assessment, so it's about getting that at the right time. Now, across Scotland, and Dumfries and Galloway is no different to this, universal services are really good at delivering universal support. Social work services are really good at delivering social work support, but because of the strain on the whole system over the last 10 or 15 years, the gap between those who get on okay with general support and those who need specialist support has grown, and that's part of what the promise is trying to fill the gap. So that's what our family support service are doing. The plans that we have for expansion of that through some of the commitment that's made reference to in terms of the Scottish Government funding is to specifically address that issue as well. So yes, our collaboration is good. The training I mentioned earlier on signs of safety was given to almost all teachers in the region, to the now retired Audrey Lowry, who I've given a massive thanks to previously. She did some tremendous work, but we're going to improve that by putting some structural changes in place as well. So we will see improvements there as we move forward.
Okay, George.
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic answer, and I would really keen to see how that develops, because we know that we often get comment from teachers that we're not social workers. That's not what we're trained to do, but there needs to be some development, I think, whether it's specialism or more general. But from what you're saying, you're on the case, and that commend you for that. Brilliant. It would be great to be kept up to date in that and link with the Education Committee as well. Thank you.
Thanks, George. The only thing I would say, Stephen, I'm wondering, there's obviously a close working relationship between schools and social work. Yeah. What about the rest of the council? Things like leisure and sport, where things can come up. Can you make any comment on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I chair the council's corporate. Well, sorry, it's not the council's. I chair Dumfries and Galloway's corporate parenting group, which is the group of multi-agency partners across police, health, fire service, Skills Development Scotland, higher education establishments and council services. So within that, we've got good representation from colleagues in health. And one of our successes a couple of years ago was giving looked after children free access to to leisure services, but in the background, so it wasn't stigmatising. So yes, our corporate parent group, which I chair, absolutely enables that synergy to come together as well as it can.
Okay, thanks very much. Anyone else? Paula?
I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Stephen, but it says here that it's £50 million in the current year for the funding from the Scottish Government, but how much of that is actually for Dumfries and Galloway Council?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, that's 3.10.
I know the report quite well. Thanks. What the Scottish Government have done so far is they've committed the initial 50 million, and 32 million of that was to local authorities, and 18 million was for support from a national basis with some specific schemes that they're doing. So Dumfries and Galloway's share of that 32 million in tranche 1, as it's called, is approximately £917,000. And what the Scottish Government have done is they've committed that as recurring funding for the lifetime of the Parliament. So any services, for example, that are supported with that there's a confidence that the money is going to be there. What the Scottish Government haven't yet done, but we're hoping we'll hear soon, is with the remainder of the £500 million, they can give local authorities some early notice as to what the share of that would be, so we can strategically plan as we move forward into the future. Unfortunately, we don't have that yet, but like I said, we're hoping to get that as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, Paula, yeah. Okay, thanks. Anyone else? I'm not seeing anything coming up online. Nobody in the room. So I'm going to move to the recommendations. We are asked to note the commitment to keep the promise as detailed in section 3. We're asked to note the positive progress that is going on across Dumfries and Galloway as noted in the appendix, and note the update on progress delivering on the promise will be brought to this committee on a 6-monthly basis for review and scrutiny. Normally we would have reports where we need to make a decision. I would suggest that this is one occasion where I think we need to keep an eye on it. So are we comfortable with these recommendations? Yeah. Agreed? Thank you. Move on to item 6. Did you want to move on to item 6, the appointment to outside bodies. Is Tracy Sonko online, is she? Are you doing it, Claire, yeah?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If any queries, I'll do my best to assist.
Okay. What I'm intending doing here is let's have a discussion about each of the 4 recommendations, and we can, from that, come to a decision about whether we think we should do it, whether we don't do it, or whatever, and work our way through them systematically. So we're going to talk about Alcohol and Drugs Support South West Scotland. This is a commission service, am I right, Lillian?
Yes.
Yeah. We did ask for advice on whether it was a conflict. My understanding is governance reckon it's not a conflict. It's like every other outside body. Am I right? Claire, can you give me some clarity on that?
Yeah, the report references the section of the Members' Code of Conduct for appointments to outside bodies. I would say just generally that any appointment to any outside body obviously offers a degree of potential for a conflict of interest. It's up to members how they handle that, and say when you're appointed to, depending on the role as well, there's obviously more potential for that conflict and any subsequent declarations of interest. Okay, thank you. So if we're taking them one by one, all right, the Alcohol and Drug Support South West, they're asking for an observer from the council. I know at least one member who's shown an interest in potentially taking that on. If we as a committee decide it's something that we should do. Linda, I'm allowed to say, Linda's actually said that she'd be happy to take on that role. Now, would we do it for a 5-year stint, or would we do it for maybe a year and monitor how it works and then come back again? I'm entirely in your hands on this one, because what do you want to do here? Yeah, and you want to come in, Claire? The Council agreed that in general terms for their scheme of representation outside bodies that all these appointments would be subject to an annual review. Yeah, I know. I was making it clear that we could review it after a year, which is covered in the standing orders, or the change to standing orders. I mean, are we comfortable? And I'm looking online as well to see if there's anyone has any comment. We've got one volunteer. It's only for one person. There's no sub on it. I'm happy to nominate Linda if we're all agreed that we should do this. Be comfy?
Yeah, happy to proceed on that basis.
So the chair and vice chair are happy to nominate and second. You okay with that? Okay, well, congratulations, Linda. Okay, so we'll move on swiftly to the Care Trust. Again, the Care Trust are asking for, let me see it again. An advisor. I have made contact by chance, actually, with the manager of that service. They're happy with an advisor. They would be just as happy if there wasn't one, because they would either pick things up on a ward-by-ward basis, depending what it was or whatever. I'm not particularly exercised about this one. I think the Provost wants to come in because she's prior knowledge of this group.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was wondering if I was a bit confused when I saw this, because I was wondering if this was an updated position with this trust, because I was actually on this board on the last term, and I went and met with the manager you're talking about. Very dedicated, very impressed with the manager. She's very dedicated to that service. into all those who access it, but there was no board. I had one meeting and she said she'd get in touch whenever she needed anything. They didn't seem to need very much extra assistance, so there actually wasn't a board for the past 5 years. So is this a new updated position with that trust?
Okay, Marion, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Councillor Little. The process was that the council had sent out a request for organisations to fill in this template. And this is the information that has come back from the Care Trust. My understanding is that the boards were stood down as a consequence of COVID, and they've only started to look at bringing those back on line. I don't think it's a change of position. I think what has happened, for whatever reason, the board never met as indicated in the last paragraph, that they would be meeting every 2 months. So I could certainly happy go back and check with them if the plan would be to meet every 2 months, but that certainly is in their constitution and their terms of reference. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to come back in, Tracy?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Lillian, but this wasn't prior or during COVID. I mean, this was 2017 when I was appointed onto this, and there was no board at all. They never met at all. Well, this is what the manager had said, so maybe they've re-established one that maybe had stood down long before. It just seemed to be the manager on her own, dealing with everything on her own, bless her.
Yeah, when she spoke to me, she mentioned a councillor who's not been a councillor since before 2017 was the last person that worked with them. But I think there's also been a change in the management as well, because the lady who's now in charge, that time wasn't the person in charge, but is now. So I think there's been some changes. I mean, but the bottom line here is, as I say, I'm not particularly exercised whether we do or not. If there's any volunteers for it, I'm quite happy for it to happen again, because it can get an annual review, you know, as per the standing orders. So if there's nothing happens in the next year, hi Ananda, we'll pick you up in a minute. Yeah. So where do you want to go with this, folks? Is there any volunteer? Well, first off, you know, is this something we should be supporting? Is it something we should be helping them with? If we agree to that, have we got any volunteers? Deadly silence. Linda?
Thanks, Chair. I think for me, there's not enough information to make a decision. That sounds like postponing it again, but there's not enough information there to say whether we should be or not. And the fact that Councillor Little has mentioned there isn't a board there is if not concerning. I would prefer to have more information on that and maybe come back to I know it's a bit prolonged, but come back and make a decision with more information.
I think you're right, given the anecdotal evidence from the Provost who was on it in the last committee, what we've picked up from the work that's been done since the last Social Work Committee and Lillian's update there. I think you're right. We can easily bring it back as a single item, but I think we again, we need to be really clear, because this is a commission service and you know exactly what they want us to do. So I'm happy enough to delay this one to the next committee and get some more information so that we can make an advised position. Yeah, you want to come in, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just want to check from members that what we really need clarity around is, one, is if there is a board. 2, if the board will meet as indicated in the template twice monthly, and the expectation of the member who would or doesn't volunteer to do this, what their role would be advisory on that board. Is that really, if I bring that back to members, then we can make that single decision?
I think so, yes, because I'm not sure if the lines got crossed when we asked for it at the last committee for some clarification. Because it looks as though what's happened is that the questionnaire was sent out to them again, and so we've got it's like their Santa Claus list, for lack of better words. We need some more information about what the councillor would be expected to do, what the commitment would be, blah, 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 before we can make a decision, rather than appoint somebody and then find out it's not appropriate. I would rather err on the side of caution rather than, can we agreement on that, yeah? Okay, so that's agreed. So we'll go on to the Dumfries and Stewart Women's Aid. Lillian, can you give us an update? Because I believe an area committee has already, there's a bit of anomaly here, shall we say.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Chair. At the last committee meeting, we had a conversation around the fact that the Wigtonshire Women's Aid representative is nominated and appointed via the area committee. Obviously, the Nithsdale and Stewartry Women's Aid comes to Social Work Committee, so the representation is still required, but I think moving forward, I have spoken to governance around whether both Women's Aid nominations and discussion should come via Social Work Committee, or if the Nithsdale and Stewartry Women's Aid should go to either Nithsdale Area Committee or Stewartry Area Committee. The advice is that at this moment in time, and again, given that they're yearly reviewed, that the Nithsdale and Stewartry Women's Aid Committee would be a responsibility for a nomination from Social Work Committee with a review in a year's time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so from that, I think we all, at least I'm hoping we're all agreeing that we should support the Women's Aid group, yeah? So from that then, how do we want to take this forward? Have we got a nomination for a member and a sub to go onto this group for the year, and in the year we'll look at the wider issue about whether they should all come under the Social Work Committee or they should be area committees or whatever it could be, and leave Lillian and governance to bring back a report to explain or give us recommendations. So are we comfy with that? Yeah? Right, okay, so I think I'm going to get a vote here. Right, okay. Nominations for the elected member to sit on the Dumfries and Stewart Women's Aid. Andy?
Chair, can I just seek a point of clarification before we do that, please? It says that the elected member would be there as an observer, so that would imply no ability to influence or direct. So I'm really wondering what the value is to us as a council in relation to that. Thanks.
Well, I think that's exactly why we're bringing it back in a year's time. Review it, because that's what standing orders allow, Andy, because a lot of these are all historical. But it's how do we support and what kind of support do they get over and above giving the ARA Commission service as well, am I right? Yep, yep.
Grant allocated service rather than commissioned. Well, they do receive funding.
They receive funding from the council, right? Okay, so that actually makes it a bit more awkward, doesn't it? Because a grant is usually decided by councillors, where commissions are a different process, am I right? Yeah. So where are we going with this? And are we saying, I mean, I don't think there's any clarification we can give you, Andy, at this moment in time. And I think it's something we'll suck and see as we go through the year. And if it's not working properly, then we can review it in a year's time. Yeah, Tracy?
If we are going to be appointing a member, I'm happy to do that if no one else. But I mean, I am happy to do it, actually, not if no one else, but...
Okay, is there anybody else? And I'm looking at the digital room as well as in the room here. So we've got one volunteer in Tracy. Have we got a volunteer to be a sub? Andy Mack?
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, are we happy to take that by acclaim, or do we need a vote? Happy just to accept that? Accept the volunteer? Okay, that's brilliant. And again, we can wait up over the year and see how we get on. Yeah. Take that. Okay, so that's that bit done. The last one is the Older People's Consultative Group. Well, it should be relatively straightforward. This was a coming together of the NHS and the local authority as a means of engaging with older people on the services that they get. It was in place pre-integration. It's over its lifetime, because I've been involved in it 2 or 3 times. It's actually played a significant part in making sure the older people in Dumfries and Galloway's voice was heard when they were reviewing new legislation, for example, new policies. I would suggest it's a very useful tool in engaging the older people, who are about 35–40% of our population. So I'm kind of saying I think we should continue with this, given it was a commitment from both previous councils and previous NHS boards. We'd be quite happy to keep this going and resurrect and get it up and active again.
Agreed, yes.
Agreed. So we need a rep. In the past, it was usually the chair of social work who did it, and a non-exec member for the NHS board, and the chair changed hands every year, so that both the NHS local authority were done. So as chair, I'm quite happy to take it on if somebody wants to nominate me, but
Happy to nominate you.
thanks very much.
Happy to second.
Yeah, so is there anybody got a counter view? I mean, are we going to have to go to a vote on this one? No. I didn't want to cast aspersions on the old leader, but she did promise me Christmas dinners the last time and I never got one, but I think that was COVID. But we'll leave it at that. So I'll take that on as chair. So if Lillian, we can arrange to get in touch, because the lead officer, if I'm right, is the head of primary care in the NHS, am I right?
I'll pick that up. Yes.
So if you can pick that up to move that forward. So is there anything else on those 4 appointments that we want to discuss? Are we happy just in the recommendations? So that would be, for 2.1 would be for Linda to be the elected member on alcohol and drug support. The Care Trust we're wanting more information. The Women's Aid will be Tracy with Andy Mack as a sub, and myself for the OPCG. We agreed with that?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 7. It's good morning, Ananda. I see in the chat there you're asking if Donna Maxwell can come in. Is Donna online, do you know?
Yes, I understand that she's anticipating that she'll be called.
Right, okay. Marianne will give me a thumbs up when she's online. Yeah, I've got a thumbs up on you, Marianne. And good morning as well, Donna. So, obviously the report was a historical one, 21-22 with figures until March 31st, 22. Covers the period of COVID-19 response, moving into recovery. Looking at ways in which to try and get this detail to members quicker, and I may reflect on this. Okay, that's my notes on this one. And I'm across to you. Is there anything you want to update us, or you just want to go straight to questions?
No, it was just to add that since this report was published, the Haste Survey, which is the Health and Care Experience Survey, has been published again. So we're going to be bringing you a separate report with the updated results from that at some point in the future. That's currently working through the governance process. So that will be coming to you soon. So anything that relates to Haste Survey results will be quite out of date now. And other than that, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Ananda. I'm aware that more than half the committee are brand new. Could you maybe explain what Haste was, so that they understand exactly what it is? Keep the acronyms down to a minimum if we can.
Yep. So yeah, the Haste survey is a survey that started out as a GP survey, and it was broadened out over time to include the views of people who have experience with care and who are carers. So they are a subset. It's about 15,000 invites go out every 2 years. We typically have a very good response rate from that compared to Scotland. We tend to get about 5,000 responses back, which is about 33%. Of those, typically around 500 or so are people who have identified themselves as carers, and a similar proportion, possibly even more, identify themselves as being in receipt of care. Sub-questions which relate specifically to those areas, and they are included both in the IGB performance framework and also in your local government benchmarking tool. So the experience questions, I feel supported, or I feel that my care was well coordinated, those all come from this Haste survey. Happens every 2 years, and as I say, it was published since this report was written, so we will be giving you an update on the latest figures in the future.
Thanks very much, Ananda. I think Andy Mack had a question first and then Willie, okay?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Ananda, thank you for coming along. On page 61 of the report, it talks about self-directed care, or the patient's ability to direct what sort of care they want and how they achieve it. And we appear to be performing particularly poorly in relation to the Scottish average. Can you tell me what we can do about that, if anything, and whose responsibility that might be?
So
you covering it, Ananda, or Lillian's got her finger poised ready to come in as well, so I'll let Ananda come in first. Yeah.
No, it's just to say that obviously different local authorities, while everyone is promoting self-directed support, different local authorities actually do the recording differently. So it's not necessarily always comparing like with like. Option 2 tends to be where people negotiate with the care providers to look at a bespoke way of providing the care. And I suppose the quality improvement actions around that is really better to go to Lillian for that. But just to say, from the perspective of how it's recorded, it can be apples and pears at this point, but it's the best we've got. So I'll pass to Lillian to talk about innovations with our providers.
Andy, do you want to come in back here now, or are you wanting Lillian to come in?
Yeah, please, thanks, Chair. Yeah, sorry, I am fairly new to this, so please forgive me if I'm asking silly questions, but my understanding was that the whole purpose of this was that it was supposed to allow comparison, direct comparison, and that where that wasn't possible, we'd go to the health boards and do it in that way. So is this really a governance issue in relation to how the data is collected?
I think the discussions around having a national care service is leading us to have consultations around how the definitions are used across the whole country. There's been a call for greater standardization of the data sets and how we define what it is that we are doing. I wouldn't say it's a governance issue. It's more to do with just how these things have been historically applied. And the different service models that we have across the country. So there was a consultation out recently, I think closed mid-August, to do with data definitions and the improvements that we need to ensure that we have consistency, to make sure that this benchmarking genuinely does allow us to do like-for-like comparisons, but it's a work in progress.
Okay, Andy. Lillian, do you want to come in? Or not?
Sure. Thanks, Chair. Thank you. It's a really important point to raise here. I mean, we have made significant improvement and opportunities to use the self-directed services option. However, it probably relates straight back to report 1, where I talked about our social care staff, the use of personal assistance, which a lot of self-directed support relies on. Extremely difficult to get personal assistance in Dumfries and Galloway. It's another area and another aspect of our recruitment challenges that we've got in terms of the demographics of the population and folks that, one, are able and qualified to undertake that task, but also that wish to practice within social care. So it is absolutely an area that we are focused on. We have worked very hard to promote it. We've got a team dedicated to it. Within social work, we are also part of a national pilot to try and increase the uptake around self-directed services. So certainly from our point of view, we're acutely aware that this is a real issue. We would always want empowerment for our service users. You know, the principles of social work and self-directed support are about empowering others to empower themselves, and it's a starting point for us. But sometimes the practicalities of being able to deliver self-directed support in a very large geographical urban and rural region is extremely difficult, and we have found that particularly around the opportunity for personal assistants to offer that support. So it has improved since the kind of parameters around this reporting period, but I certainly would never sit here and say to any council member that we've got this where we want it to be. It's an area that we're working very hard to try and improve without a shadow of a doubt. Sometimes the practicalities get in our way, and that's also linked around the access to additional support around respite and aids and adaptations, where a lot of that comes from the central belt. So sometimes we are curtailed by the ability to be able to deliver that purely down to the geographical setup of the region. But we certainly are working on it. Thank you.
Okay, Andy, yeah. Wally, did you want to come in? Yeah.
Aye, please, Chair. I recognise that I'm a member of the IGB, and I think we've discussed this. So it is a pretty historical document, and I welcome Ananda's remarks there about bringing forward an up-to-date report. But I think for social work, I think we need to also know what's going on in terms of our perspective. And I'm looking at page 54. Our GP practices were also still seeing the most critically ill people. Now, I don't know if any of the rest of the members see it, but, social media is raging west of the region in terms of GP practices, and what I understood to be that those were opening up further, not just to deal with critically ill people, but for appointments. And it would be good to get an update on, where we are with GP practices to this committee, notwithstanding it's a primary care issue. But, as a member of a ward, and I'm particularly concerned about people not being able to access their GP. Now, this could be down to a number of factors in terms of recruitment, again, for GPs, but it may be particularly acute west of the region. And again, turning to page 56, in terms of performance in terms of cancer pathways, and this one has been outstanding for a decade and maybe longer, in terms of getting the correct pathway for people who are unfortunate to suffer from cancer of any description. And again, referring to the motion that we put forward to Council that went to Health Board and IGB, and that's on neonatal services, particularly again to the west of the region, and it's disappointing to report that again we've had another childbirth in an ambulance just recently, within the last few weeks. Not so good for the mother, but that was birth while still within the confines of the hospital, the Galloway Community Hospital. That may be the subject of a complaint to follow. And again, to this one, and it's on dentistry, recognising this is an historical document, but we are now being reported that 1 in 5 dentist practices are only recruiting for NHS patients. And I can think back to the dark days when we saw throughout the whole of the region queues upon queues waiting outside dentist practices to try and get a place within their practices. So I think we do need updates to this committee on each of them, and maybe more in terms of where we are at, because we're the ones in the cold phase in terms of performance when people can't access or they're receiving what they regard as no the service that they require. So I would hope that this committee could seek those reports either from Ananda or through Lillian to this committee, so that we know where we're at in each of these services that we are delivering as a health and social care partnership. We are part of that partnership as a social work and a council, so I would hope we can get these reports sooner maybe than what Ananda is suggesting.
Willie, that's a really interesting point. I'm looking at the delegations. We don't have that delegation right now, but we do have part of our delegations to receive and scrutinise reports from the Clinical and Care Governance Committee, providing assurance regarding the quality and safety of services being delivered via the Integration Joint Board and make requests as appropriate. So it's no, I think there's a bit of work needs to be done there through governance, not our governance, but the IGB's governance, to make sure that we're doing it right. And no doubt you'll be able to raise that yourself. And I think Paula, we're well served here. And Andy Mack, of course, we're well served here. We voting members in the IGB. So I think that will come back via the IGB. Ananda, I think there was some talk about different governance, how we look at scrutinising some of the reports. Is that some of the recommendations that are coming forward?
So I'm not involved with that, but I am aware that there is a review of the governance pathways and the roles and remits of the committees within the IJB at the moment. I will bring those 4 points back to the people who are having a look at that for them to discuss what's the best pathway to ensure that you have the information you need for the role and remit of this committee.
Okay, thanks very much. I think that's the best we can do today. If Andy Mack is the Vice Chair of the IGB and the other members can actually take that forward through the IGB. When would you next be due to report back to this committee in terms of governance? Yeah, in terms of performance. Yeah.
I think the next reports that are due to come to you are the November reports for the area committee, the locality reports. But I don't think they come directly to the Social Work Committee. I think the Social Work Committee has delegated that they go straight to the area committees.
Yes, so it'll be done through the area committees. Yeah, and that will be coming in, you reckon, when November, did you say? November?
Yeah, the November meetings.
Okay, and in the meantime, individual committee members with individual issues need to take it up through the normal channels. I think that's what we're saying here. And then that can be raised again within the IGB about how we take this forward, because they can issue the direction back to us about how we do it. We can issue directions to the IGB. Yeah. Okay, so I think where we are, Willie, is I'm handing it straight back to you as an IGB member. You can raise it at the IGB, and that'll come back as a direction to us about how it wants to be done, depending on what the IGB decides. Right? No.
Could I come back in that?
And we're not starting another argument about it, no, because
absolutely.
That's the ruling. I don't think
there is an argument, Chair.
Sorry?
It's just to come back in terms of governance and what you referred to when you read out, what our delegation is, and you did refer to that main need for governance to look at. I think it's the parent committee, then I think it should come back to this, but you did refer to another part of that where we're able. This is about performance, and quite happy to raise it with the IJB, but so that the social work committee is aware of some of the issues that are happening within the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, and that's the only reason I ask it comes back here. And I think there's enough there to ask for a report back here, notwithstanding that it's going to an area committee, could come via area committee back to social work or full council on any referrals back.
Well, you mentioned the magic words to me, will the full council, because my understanding and my knowledge of the thing is it's the council and the NHS that are integrated, not social work in the NHS. So that the delegation comes from council to us, and that's the bit we're straying a wee bit into making it up in the back of a fag packet, and I'm no for that. So I think we need to go away, have a real look at it behind the scenes, and then bring it back. Okay, that makes sense. All right then. Andy?
Yeah, just one more question, please, for Anand. It's on page 64, runs into page 65. There's a graph there talking about Telecare. Again, as new to this, I'm not sure I fully understand it, and I'm not sure if that graph represents good or bad performance. Is that something you could enlighten us on in relation to what exactly is Telecare and how are we performing? Thanks.
So Telecare that's referred to in that particular chart is very specifically the home care hub box with the various tools like falls monitoring and things like that. So it's very much the care call box. Now the partnership is very much committed to promoting other forms of AIT, so that's assistive and inclusive technology. It doesn't include things like the ARMID trial or the kind of apps that are being used. So as we go forward, we need to consider how we actually bring you performance around AIT in its fullest use. What we can say is that it's really consistent, that we know that the level of use of the home care box is a very consistent, it's regular part of our business practice. So it's to start off with, there was an upward trend to get it into regular use, and we were watching the fast increase. It's now plateaued, essentially, to say that this is now the kind of the level that you would expect. So although there's minor variations from one point of time to another, this is probably past its best as a performance indicator, because it's now being normalized, and we should probably move on to something new to have a look at how we're ramping up the use of AIT across the partnership. So it's something to consider as we think about the business plans going forward.
Okay, Andy?
No, if I can just come back, please, Chair. So what this is indicating, as I understand, is that the number of people who are using the system that we have actually installed in their homes, but it doesn't actually tell you the purpose for that use, whether it was a fall or whether it's just a call for assistance or whether it's a false alarm or that sort of thing. Do we have that sort of breakdown of that information?
I'm sure that the Telecare team would be able to provide that level of detail. This high-level indicator was just to ensure that people had the option. This is not even the ones that are being used. This is everybody who has that as an option in their house. So they may be lucky and actually never need to use it. Fingers crossed. So this is just, do people have the safety net of having this as an available technology to support their safety?
Yeah, Lillian, why don't you come in?
Yeah, I could certainly get the care call team to give us a more detailed report on the usage, if that would be helpful, and I'll share that report with all members of the committee. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, please, because all this is telling us is that we've installed it in 76% of the people who might want it. It doesn't tell us what benefit we're getting from it or what use. Thanks.
No, that's fair enough. So there's a commitment area to get a briefing note for the committee, or have we just got to share it with all 43 members?
Yeah.
Right, we'll just share it with, because it would be interest to everybody, I would suggest, rather than just us. Yeah. Pauline?
Yeah, morning members. Thanks, Chair. It was just to ask the question, probably for yourself, Ananda. It's great. It's a good report, but there's no mention at all of palliative care. And could you just confirm with me, does that come under the remit of just the IGB? And if it does, is there any way the next time we have our next committee meeting for social work, could it be included, as we still don't have figures as to how many people are being referred home because there's no space in the Alexandria unit or in any of the cottage hospitals, or certainly a lack of space. I did have a follow-up meeting with regards to palliative care with the consultant at DGRI, and there was a superb website going to be put in place for people to be able to access urgent information with regards to the crisis that we're facing. And I do understand all the difficulties, but, you know, I just want clarification if possible for members and myself, perhaps at the next meeting or through the IGB chair, if that's possible, with regards to where we're sitting at with this situation to do with palliative care. Thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
All right, so there isn't, this report reflects the performance framework, and it's specifically the benchmarking aspects. So we don't have any indicators that we can benchmark for the delivery, and that it's some really detailed kind of delivery.
We've lost you.
Ananda, I think you've gone on to mute. Thank you.
Ananda, can you hear me? You can't hear me at all? No. Pauline, it looks as though we've lost Ananda somewhere in the Ethernet. But she's getting it lally, put it that way. She's keeping talking to everybody.
Is Donna there?
Donna, are you still there, Donna?
I can hear you, but my screen is frozen.
Yeah, I can hear you, Ananda, but I can't hear anyone else. I don't know if we've lost connection with the council chamber. Can you hear us, Andy? Can you hear us, Chair? Can you hear us, Lillian?
It's a Castle Douglas problem again. Okay. Right. You were talking for quite a while there, Ananda, so we are... can you kind of tell us what you were trying to say?
Yes, apologies. I'll just recap. Palliative care is not included in benchmarking, but a detailed briefing on where we're at with the delivery of palliative care is something that we will take back to our officers, and we will work out outside the chamber what's the appropriate governance to get that back to you.
Okay, Pauline, just at the same time, Ananda, I know, obviously, from previous experience that we just recently put together a palliative care strategy. I'm wondering if we could get that shared just with everybody as well, so that we know exactly where we are, rather than just have anecdotal evidence. You okay with that? Pauline, you okay with that?
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate that. I think we would be interested, obviously I can't speak on behalf of other members, but it would be interesting to have it benchmarked against the national figures as well. But if that's not possible, I totally understand. But yeah, any report back on it would be most appreciated. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, we'll leave it in Ananda's hands to actually see what she can get put together for us, and then we can share it with the, on this occasion, the 21 members initially, the Social Work Committee, yeah. Anybody else want to come in? Don't think so. Linda, sorry, yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I'll wave a bit harder. Just focusing on page 65, 2.8, people who work in health and social care services feel engaged with the work they do. Reporting on sick absence, and the only report really, the only indicator is saying sick absence for NHS employees is the only indicator where comparable benchmarking data is available across Scotland. The sick absence in D&G is slightly above the NHS national target, which is not surprising. But what's a bit concerning for me is the figures don't include absence related to COVID, as these were reported separately using a different system. Interesting use of statistical data. And also the sick absence, at the bottom of the page, it looks at sick absence for social work service employees, that's 4.9. I just want to know what difference COVID figures would make to that, and do we need, again, to be monitoring that in terms of where we're going from a social care perspective? Thank you.
You got that, Ananda?
Right. So because COVID was a special case and it was recorded specially as special leave rather than normal sick leave, this gives you the underlying burden of all the other illness, essentially. What we did find in the NHS data was that we had particular spikes. Every time we had a wave of COVID, obviously it goes through the whole community, and we ended up with spikes within our staff as well. I guess this gives you an indication of the overall underlying levels that we would normally see. We can produce this with the COVID on top as well, but all it really does is tell you where the COVID spikes were. So we didn't think it was particularly helpful because it masks then all the other things that people have challenges with.
Lillian, do you want to come in to add to that? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just also to say that these figures reflect the adult social care service that's delegated. Doesn't cover all social work services, and actually during the COVID pandemic we had a decrease in our absence, but unfortunately moving forward we've started to see an increase in our absence. So certainly, if required, can provide more detailed information on the overall social work figures, but just to reflect to members, this is the adult social work services only. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I'm assuming those figures are also reported elsewhere in the council, aren't they? So, so which committee's got delegations? Full council.
Yeah.
Right, so it goes to full council. So all 43 members will get a chance to scrutinise and look at it. So is that okay, Linda? Yep. Thanks. Anybody else? No. Just reflecting here on the SDS issues earlier. Lillian, we talked earlier about doing presentations, and I'm actually wondering, can we do that at the October meeting? Have a presentation on self-directed support so people understand all the different styles and what they... I think we also have to have a health warning. If the staff are totally swamped, we sometimes might have to put it off. I think that we'll do it. The plan is to have it, okay? But obviously, the public health warning is, if there was something happened, we might have to delay it and bring it back to another committee. But yeah, or do something similar. Right. So I think what we're going to do as well is have it at the start of the committee meeting, so that folk didn't finish early and go away. so they didn't miss the class for their getting things done. So so with your support, Lillian, will aim to do a presentation on self-directed support or service at 10 o'clock. So we'll start a wee bit early, so it gives you the choice to either join us or not join us. But the pressure's on to be there, okay? Right, Ananda, I'm just looking around the room. I don't think there's anything else. We're asked to note and discuss. I think we've done both. And thank you very much for the two of you for your time and for the responses this morning. Willie?
Yeah, Chair, it's just in the recommendation, notwithstanding what you've said there. It's really where we pick up on the governance issue, just so that we have a trace of that. We can track that.
It's the IGB's governance issue, no ours.
No, the one that you referred to earlier, Chair, in terms of report back to social work. That's what I'm saying, that it's the partnership is with the council and the health board. How we receive, you did refer to it, that we could look at that.
Yeah, but my understanding that work's underway, so there will be reports coming in that, Willie. So we don't need to change the recommendations for that. So, because this is a bit of a historical document here rather than the future. So, with your leave, I think we'll leave that and come back to it. I think it's no doubt we'll be facing up to that in the future as we take through the term here. So, back to the recommendations. We're asked to note and discuss the Health and Social Care Interim Performance Report for 21-22 as set out in the appendix in relation to the benchmarking for the rest of Scotland. Okay. We don't need to put in the recommendations, but we've got a commitment that we'll have an SDS seminar, or whatever you want to call it, at 10 o'clock before the next committee meeting in October. Okay? Happy with that? Yep. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 8, which is purely for noting. It's the Public Protection Committee minutes. We don't normally open this up for any discussion. If any member's got a problem with any of it and want any clarification, just get in touch with Lily, and I would suggest.
Yes.
And we can deal with it that way. Okay, so it's just a case of noting that that minute. It's a conjoined body, it's not us. So are we happy with that? Okay. That's the last thing on the agenda today. I'd just like to say thank you. I hope you've all had a decent holiday, because you're going to need it, because I think we're going to be busier as we go through. I think this is probably the last of the quiet committees. From here on in, I think we'll get more and more papers to scrutinise and everything. So thanks very much for your time today and the way you've conducted the business. Very businesslike. Thank you very much. Okay, bye everybody.